Well guys, welcome to another video. This one's going to be a little different because I'm trying to film it on the webcam on my laptop, and it doesn't look like it's going to be that high quality, so I'm sorry about that. But what we're going to talk about will mostly be me going over different charts of why I chose this R53 Mini. So for those of you who have been on the channel a while, you know before this Mini I had an E39 540i, and I loved that car. It was great. There was really nothing wrong with it. I was just ready to move on to something different, and I had a list of things that I wanted in a new car. Number one, I had to have a manual transmission. Number two, I wanted it to be a performance version of a car. So I didn't want it to just be a regular car. I wanted it to be something that the manufacturer put some time and effort into making a hotter version of that car. Number three, I wanted it to be a practical car. So it didn't need to be something like a Miata where I couldn't fit anything in the trunk, even though it would have fulfilled most of the other options on my list. It also needed to get good gas mileage, so we're now looking at something that probably has a 4-cylinder engine, is probably a sedan or a hatchback, and then that really starts to narrow it down to things like a Honda Civic, or a Golf GTI, or a Fiat 500 Abarth, or the Mini Cooper behind us. I also considered the Ford Focus SVT. It looked a little bit too bland. I never really looked at the Acura RSX, but I probably should have just because it was a slightly nicer version of the Civic Si at the time. But we're going to go through the main 4 contenders that I narrowed it down to, which were the 8th Gen Civic Si, the R53 Cooper S, the Fiat 500 Abarth, and a Volkswagen Mark V GTI. So now we're going to transition over to a list I made to compare those cars. We're going to narrow it from 4 down to 2, and then we will explain why I finally settled on this car back here, and why I'm very happy with my decision. I'm sorry about the formatting. This got a little jumbled when I converted it from a Word document to a PDF file, but all of the information is still there, and it's still easy to follow. On the left side of the screen, if it's a large font, that means it's more important to me, so I'm more worried about the size of the car, how much fun it is, compared to how quickly it's going to get to 60 miles an hour or go through the quarter mile. If it's in bold underneath the car, that means that it won for that category. So if you're looking at powertrain, the K20 cleaned up there with the highest red line and the most power. If you look at something like price, the Mini easily won at $5,000. So the way that I went through this list is I tried to order all the cars from 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and then added up the points almost like golf. So whoever had the lowest total score, that's the car that won. Looking through it, if you'll notice, the Mini, which is a car I obviously bought, ended up being 2nd place in almost every category. It was the 2nd smallest, it was the 2nd most fun, the 2nd most practical. It had my 2nd favorite engine, it had the 2nd best red line. It filled in a lot of the gaps and hit perfect compromise of what I wanted in a car. The Honda easily had the best powertrain. The K20 with that 6-speed manual transmission, they're amazing. I've got to drive my boss's one time and loved it. It was just a great car to drive. The problem is, and this is gonna make some people angry, I do not want to drive a Honda. I don't want to be a part of the Honda community. I don't think it has a particularly good reputation. They're great cars that have been ruined by the people who buy them. There are a lot of amazing people who drive Hondas, but usually those are the people who are quiet and just enjoy their car. It's the vocal, obnoxious people that have ruined the Honda reputation for me, and I just can't do it. The same thing goes for VW. It's basically the Euro version of a Honda. Also, the fact that for me, it didn't win any of the categories. It was the largest, it was the heaviest, it had a turbocharged engine, which for me is a huge negative. I don't enjoy turbo cars. So really, the communities were the biggest thing that instantly eliminated the Honda and the Golf for me. I do think the Golf looks better than the Civic Si, but looking at Civic Si's as I'm driving around, to a regular person, it just looks like I bought an old Honda. It doesn't really have any sort of curb appeal, or as I pull up to one of the doctor's offices I'm working at, no one's going to be impressed with the car that I'm driving. And while some people say you shouldn't care whatever the people think of your car, if a patient sees me in the parking lot, I want them to think, yeah, he's doing pretty well, and I'm happy to let him take care of me. So that's just part of the world, something I have to accept. And it quickly got narrowed down to the Fiat or the Mini. And the Fiat was originally the car that started all of this. I wanted one, and they were just a little bit too expensive because they were a bit too new, and I just didn't want to spend that money on basically a daily beater. And then I remembered that the Mini existed, and that's where this all started. So we're going to narrow down to the Mini and the Fiat, and we'll compare the two, and we'll see why eventually I did settle on the Mini. So here we have a smaller version of that chart, and we are comparing just the Fiat and the Mini. And as you can see, other than size, the Mini cleans up here. It has the better engine, the better red line. It is quicker in a straight line. It's a little bit heavier, but the biggest thing between the two of them is price. At $4,000 cheaper, and eventually the price I got $5,000 cheaper, there's a huge advantage to the Mini, which is money I could use on gas, I could use it on modifications, I could use it on maintenance, or just save it and use it on something completely different. So once I settled it down to these two cars, it was very easy for me to pick between the two. While I do love the Fiat 500 and I'm not opposed to switching to one in the future just to try something different, it was very easy for me to pick the Mini once I narrowed it down to this point. So while the Mini is not the car for everyone, I'm very happy with how it looks. I think it has a good curb appeal. I love the noise that it makes. It's one of the best 4-cylinders that I've ever heard. It was very cheap, very practical. I've loved driving it, and it can fit a lot into the back of the car with the hatchback. It gets great gas mileage. It's very sporty. It has a lot of great heritage to it. It's got a much nicer interior than the Fiat does, and it's been extremely cheap and easy to work on. So overall, I'm very happy with the car. So hopefully going through all this helps you guys kind of figure out why I switched from the BMW to the Mini. And it definitely doesn't hurt that the Mini was made by BMW, so it does make it a little bit of an easier transition. Of course, it's all my opinion, and it has nothing to do with actual facts. It's just what I want in a car. So of course, there are a bunch of people who are very happy with the other options on my list, and that's why they make different types of cars for different types of people. So again, this is just my opinion of what I wanted in a car, so not trying to piss anybody off, although I'm sure I probably did. But yeah, so of course, if you guys have any questions, you can drop those in the comments below, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next week.